Welcome back to another episode of The Summer of Me. Today we are talking about loneliness. And I have a full confession before we start this episode, before we really get into the meat and potatoes of it. When I was writing out my notes for this episode, the song, there's a song that's like, lonely, I'm so lonely. Hold on though, the song does not actually say I'm so lonely. It says I'm Mr. Lonely by Akon. And apparently it's like an older song, and I have been singing the wrong words to this song for the entirety of my life. So if you are wondering, the episode's called Lonely, I'm So Lonely, but the song is Lonely, I'm Mr. Lonely. And we're going to talk all about how I'm actually not, in fact, Mr. Lonely, I'm Miss Lonely. All right, we are getting into the nitty-gritty of loneliness today. If you have followed me on social media at all at any given time, I've probably talked about being lonely. It is a very debilitating emotion for me and probably explains why I have 14 children, not literally, but figuratively, because I don't like being lonely. And looking back, maybe that is what I did to fill some voids in my life. TBD. We're going to go all the way to the beginning. I'm going to share about loneliness, my experience with it, some things that I've done to help, but also just how real of an emotion it is. Whether you're single and alone, whether you have 5 kids, whether you're married, I think some of the loneliest people are people that are married and they're not supposed to be lonely and they think they shouldn't be lonely. I asked like a question on Instagram or something like that. I was engaging with my audience and I asked something and it was talking about loneliness, and I can't tell you how many married people were like, hold on, I'm lonely too. Like, I'm lonely on this holiday. I'm sad on this holiday. And you're like, yeah, you are. That is not uncommon. So we're going to talk about it, because we like to talk about things that are uncommon goods. Growing up, okay, so I was like the weird kid that was like doing art in my room, and like I would like take a Sharpie and like draw 14 lines on like a piece of paper and then like fill in all the little colors. And like I was just like, I was so not interested in sports. I was like, everybody else can take a trophy home. I have no interest. I thrived on being alone. Like I really, really did. I played this for my kids the other day. I would blast Shakira, like what was that album called? She was like in a wolf's costume or something. Anyways, underneath your clothes. I played this for the kids the other day. They were like, Mom, you are out of control. Anyways, that was like my core childhood memories, but like being in my room alone, like kind of decorating and listening to Shakira on repeat. What is her song about? The hips don't lie. I never picked up that ability to shake my hips like Shakira, but you know, I'm not Latin either. So our household dynamics growing up, we always were caring. My mom was always caring for sick people, which sounds like so strange, but my uncle was living with us. My grandfather was ill. We had friends and family that like my mom would help with. And so there was a lot of independence going on. And I sort of leaned into that. And I was like, I can do things alone. I wasn't like the kid who had like a ton of friends. I had maybe had like 1 or 2 close friends. I think there's 2 people that I still stay in touch with from high school even. I was just kind of a lone wolf. That's another Shakira reference for you. Do we tag her in this episode? What do you guys think? Anyways, the household dynamics were kind of like, you do your own thing. You get to roll however you want to roll. It wasn't like we were always being entertained or always busy or like sports. I wasn't on teams or anything like that. Actually, like the only thing I ever really wanted was like to be on a team where I got like the duffel bag with my name on it. I never ended up getting it. I probably need to like redeem that part of my childhood, but I just wanted the duffel bag that I could like shove a bunch of shit in and like act like I was busy like everybody else, but I actually wasn't. So from there, I kind of started to fill my time or fill the void of my time with just like random relationships. I had a relationship that I dated a guy in high school for like 3 years, and like then I jumped to another one and another one, and I started to just like fill my time with people that I could that could like entertain me, so to speak. But there was like a lot of voids in those relationships, but I wasn't like lonely necessarily because I always had company. And we're going to talk about this a lot, but company doesn't necessarily equal connection. And I think that is like a really important lesson to learn, because people are like, how the hell could you be lonely? You have 5 kids. You would not believe like how lonely you can feel by yourself with 5 kids, or even again in a marriage. Like loneliness is truly so much deeper than like the people that you're around or the activities that you're doing. It's not necessarily like a state of mind. It's like a state of heart. I don't know if that is even a thing, but that's what it was for me. Dated like a few different people. And then again, like I met my ex-husband when I was 18. So I jumped right into that relationship, and it felt good to just like have a companion that was like, I have somebody to go do things with and whatever. And I sort of started like evolving into like, I need somebody. I need to have this person that like I can send a text message to, or I can call at the end of the day. And I think as humans, we're built for connection. We crave that. It's very normal to want that. And, this is something that throughout this process, I have like beat myself up about. It's like, why do I have such a hard time being alone? And my therapist has like reiterated to me like 1,000,001 times probably, which I've probably paid for her mortgage just based on loneliness alone. But she has reiterated, like, it's very normal to want that connection. It's very normal to crave that and to not want to be lonely, obviously. But it's just not as simple as like, I am with a person. I am not lonely. It's just not that cut and dry. So basically, I started dating my ex-husband. We got married shortly, like a couple years after that. And from that point forward, I was just in a cycle of just a pattern where I was having kids and I was nursing, and you would, go to maybe like a mom and me class, or there was like a gymnastics class we used to go to, and I would like look around and I'd be like, the fuck is this the content that I have to work with? Are these my friends? But I was constantly like in the company of other people. I've told you guys this in previous episodes. I literally never was away from my kids. If I was, it was because I was working, or I was like, doing something with somebody else, and my mom had them, but it was like 2-hour stint here, whatever. Like I was never alone. In fact, being alone became like very, very foreign. So from childhood, like I was like alone all the time, started to depend on relationships to kind of fill that void, and then was like, holy shit, I actually don't know how to be alone. I mean, the most alone my life ever got was like taking a shower while somebody was like on the other side of the curtain asking me to open like a bag of pirate booty. That is a skill set that is earned to open a bag of pirate booty with wet hands. So I had little kids for so many years. I was never alone. My husband was traveling all the time. So he was gone almost every week, traveling somewhere, doing something, had a very busy social schedule, would play like rec sports. And also, did you guys know grown men play softball? It is the wildest. It is the wildest sensation. They are out there with like beer cans in their gloves, and they are playing softball like they are about to win an Olympic medal. That is a very, very real thing. So heed caution if you play softball. Anyways, I just was never alone. And so it became such a foreign feeling. I would get in bed alone a lot of nights. I would loneliness started to creep into my life though, because I was like, while I'm never alone, my thoughts are alone. I don't have a lot of people to talk to. I couldn't even talk to myself. I was like, I don't even know how to associate, like, I'm feeling lonely. Like, how do I comfort myself, or how do I seek comfort in this, or connection? Because there's like a bonding that happens with your kids, but there's not, for me at least. I know everybody's experience is different, but there wasn't like a connection, like, oh, my kids make me feel like less lonely. And furthermore, like I knew enough being in therapy since I was 7, right? Like I knew that like I was not to depend on my kids to fill voids that I like needed to be filled elsewhere. If I depend on my kids for like fulfillment and everything in life, they're going to carry a great burden that like their job is to make mom happy, and their job is to make mom not lonely, and their job is to make mom not sad. That's entirely not their job. They didn't ask for that. And so I was trying to be aware of that and like not grip on too tightly to them to feel like, oh wow, like I don't need to be lonely. I can tell my 5-year-old all about my day and like pretend like they give 2 shits. They don't. So I just really started to feel like, oh my God, I'm lonely. This is so weird. I'm not supposed to be lonely. I'm in a marriage. I have people in my life, but I was not being vulnerable. I didn't know how to seek connection, and my lifestyle was very isolating, as any motherhood experience is, in my opinion. Motherhood is one of the more, especially with littler kids, I think it is one of the more isolating jobs, so to speak, or just situations that you can be in. It's hard to get out of the house. It's hard to find people to do things with. It's like the temptation to cancel. Listen, I fucking love to cancel plans. Nothing gets me turned on more than to be like, I can't make it. I'm sick. I love when people cancel on me. I am like, fuck yes. Like, talk dirty to me. But like the temptation when you are a mom and you're like, okay, so-and-so needs a nap and this one's grumpy and whatever, like it's through the roof. And so like, it's really hard to develop deep, real friendships, because not only is it hard to get together, but then when you're getting together, you have kids like yelling and talking and shitting their pants. And it's just like, it feels impossible. It is so isolating to be a mom when your kids are little. So what I started to realize was the marriage that I'm in is not fulfilling, and it's not giving me connection. And this is kind of about the same time that the summer of me started, where I was just feeling like very alone. I felt like I had these things on paper, but in the heart of the matter, like there was just not a lot that I had to work with in terms of connection. I think loneliness in a marriage is arguably harder than loneliness when you're literally alone. I feel lonely a lot of days, but I have ways to meet my needs and to go seek that if I need it. And I'm not talking about like a one night stand or like whatever. I'm just talking about like I'm in control of those things. When you are in a marriage, it's really hard because when you're lonely in a marriage, you can't actually go get your needs met. You are sort of trapped. And like short of like, you know, obviously we communicate and we ask for our needs to be met and we express the things that we need, which we're going to talk about a little bit. But at the end of the day, like if that person's still not meeting your needs, like you don't have a lot of options there. And obviously like, okay, well, what am I going to do? Just like leave? I'm going to blow up my whole life because I feel lonely. Well, then you get into this whole cycle of like, well, shit, that's really freaking selfish. And maybe this is a season and gaslighting and all of these things that we do to ourselves, which we're going to talk about. As I started the summer of me, I leaned into figuring out why I felt lonely and figuring out if I could solve the problem, right? I'm going to fast forward a bit here for a second because this was like the crux of me feeling lonely and like funny enough, like the thing that kind of pushed me over a cliff in terms of like ending my marriage. And it's going to sound so menial and like ridiculous, but the principle here is like a light switch went off in my head and I was like, or light bulb went off in my head, switch, bulb, I don't know, both probably. And I was like, oh my God, like I have poured everything into this relationship and like this person doesn't know me. And when somebody doesn't know you, you feel lonely because it's like, there's not a connection. I was sick. I can't even remember. Maybe I had the Rona. I don't remember what it was. And I asked for a cheeseburger. I was like, I am so hungry. I just like need something to eat. And I had asked my husband at the time, I was like, can you just go get me a cheeseburger? And I was like, here's my order. Here's what I want. Remember, we have been married for 10 years at this point. I knew how this man, the temperature at which he liked his shower. I knew how much fucking pepper he wanted on his salad. I knew like the dumb things, like what's your favorite kind of ice cream, or like all of these things that you learn about somebody as like you build a connection and you're there for them and like you just like establish this relationship. I promise this is going somewhere. And that was like really important. That was one of the ways that I showed love, was like, I know you, I know what you like. I know like the little things that like make a big difference to you. And you can read anything about relationships or whatever. And you hear this maybe all the time. Like it's all about the little things. Like the little things go a long way in building connection. And I was just like, we were kind of on, this was like, I had already kind of been like pushed towards this cliff and of just like being done in this marriage because I just felt alone and I felt sad and I felt unseen and all these things. And so I asked him to give me this cheeseburger and I was like incapable of doing anything. I was so sick. And so he brought it back. This is going to make me sound like a psychopath. He brought it back and it was the wrong fucking cheeseburger, which, if you order like DoorDash or if you like get food delivered and it's wrong, like there's just, call me crazy. I know this is a first world problem, but like there's nothing more irritating than like getting a meal and it's wrong. There's just like, you have expectations, you have your taste buds are just revved up. They are ready to go and you get the wrong fucking meal. And it is like, for me at least, I'm like, fine. I'm not gonna eat it. I will be such a petty bitch. I'll be like, whatever. I'm not eating it. I was like this since I was a child, by the way. My parents would be like, have a tuna fish sandwich for dinner. And they would be like, there's no pickles. And they're like, it's fine. And like, actually, Tammy, it's actually not fine. And there's nothing fine about this. Anyway, so he brought the cheeseburger back and it had like the wrong sauce. It had sauce on it that I didn't want. And like, I didn't want to eat it because I was like pissed. And I was like, I remember sitting up in bed with every ounce of energy I had and I was like, this is the whole fucking problem. You don't know me. Like, you know nothing about me. You don't know my fucking cheeseburger order. It's not that difficult. Like, this is such simple things. I know everything about you, everything you like, everything that you want to be, eating or doing or having or, your goals, all these things. You fucking know nothing about me, not even my fucking cheeseburger order. Sorry for the F-bombs. Anyways, I was so mad. I threw the cheeseburger. I was like, I don't even want this. Get the fuck out of here. And like that day though, like I had like sirens, light bulbs, epiphanies. Like I was like, this is the problem. Like I am so alone. I don't want to be in a relationship with somebody who doesn't want to know those things, who's not like in the situation where it's like, with somebody who doesn't want those things and whose desire is not to know me in those ways, right? And this was really like the beginning of like, fuck this shit. I am not living like this. I am not doing this. I put too much in to be getting this in return. And these things do matter. They matter to me. It matters that somebody knows what I like to eat. It matters that somebody knows what flowers I like. It matters if somebody knows, you know, just like the random intricacies of each other. That was really one of the core things where I was like, I am lonely. I had a lack of friendships at this point. I was lonely because I didn't have friends to talk to. I didn't know how to be vulnerable. I wasn't willing to be vulnerable because my reality was honestly hard to believe at this point. I was like, we were supposed to have this perfect marriage, this perfect family, our kids, all these things. We had great jobs. And I was like, I can't even face the reality that like, this is how I feel. Eventually, like I also had like that lack of company. I like, you know, when you have a spouse that's traveling all the time and you get to that place where you're like, okay, this is great. Like I'm independent and whatever, but like every single week over and over and over again. And you start to feel like, well, I actually can do this on my own and I'm lonely with you and I'm lonely without you. So like, I might as well be able to, again, do something about it. And this quote I saw, and this is kind of exactly where I was at this point, was it says, and when nobody wakes you up in the morning, nobody waits for you at night, and when you can do whatever you want, what do you call it? Freedom or loneliness? And I think at that point I was lonely and I was seeking freedom. I was seeking the ability to do something about it. I wanted freedom. I wanted connection. I wanted a solution because I was like, I cannot possibly feel this way for the rest of my life. Like I cannot do this. I'll simply pass away. So I explored freedom, which brought me eventually to peace. But we're going to keep talking, but spoiler alert, I'm still lonely. So I don't have a full solution for you, except to relate to you, and to say that loneliness is so very real. There are a lot of ways in which to explore freedom and figure out like, how do I feel less lonely? And I can assure you I've probably tried them all. Going out, bars, dating, casual sex, which don't recommend. That path is futile. I dove into work. I dove into my kids. I tried like various different coping mechanisms. I really felt like, how am I going to not feel this way? And while I was outsourcing all of these feelings and trying to figure out who's going to solve them for me, who's going to answer them for me, the real answer was like, it was right in here. We need more of ourselves if we are lonely. There's another quote. I love quotes. I love Pinterest, and I have quotes tattooed all over my body. But this other quote that I love about loneliness, it says, loneliness is a sign you are in desperate need of yourself. And that's exactly what it was. All of the things that you seek if you're feeling lonely, outside of a marriage specifically, but sometimes even in a marriage, is like this validation and this attention. And what we're really seeking is connection. But before we can connect with other people, we have to like assess connecting with ourselves and really get to the nitty gritty of like, why am I feeling this way? What voids do I have in my internal happiness and like my fulfillment that like I feel like I can't be vulnerable to express that I am feeling lonely and express my needs? So a couple things you can do whether you're single or married. If you're in a marriage and you're feeling lonely, which again, I want to validate, like that is very, very normal. It's a very, very real thing. And sometimes it's worse than feeling lonely when you're single. Communicate. Number one, I think there's a lot of things that I would change in hindsight about my marriage and about just my entire past, right? Like that's normal. We all have regrets. And I don't know that it's regrets because I don't think I was equipped at that time to be able to know these things. Hindsight's 2020. I think communicating is really important. Telling your spouse, I am starting to feel a little bit lonely. Maybe you can travel a little bit less. Hey, I don't feel connected to you. Can we spend some time together? Can we make sure that we plan date nights? And really, here's the reality about being vulnerable with your spouse. Nobody can argue with your feelings. If you start that sentence with like, you're gone all the time and makes me feel lonely, that feels like an attack to somebody, even though that might be true or whatever. If you start a sentence with like, I'm feeling really lonely and I could use your help, unless he's just a total piece of shit, which some of them are, their chances are that's going to be received much better and be like, oh no, like really? Are you okay? well, no, I'm actually not. Like, I am struggling and I need you to be around, and I need I need to feel connected to you. And I'm really lonely. I need some help. Get vulnerable. You guys, I know this is like so cliche and like overused. If I hear somebody else on the internet talk about like being vulnerable, I truly will throw a cheeseburger at them. Watch me whip, nay, nay. But truly, like, it's a real thing. Like, vulnerability is a bridge to connection. And if you can be vulnerable, especially with the person that you're supposed to trust your life with and your feelings and all these things, and you've committed to a marriage with them, be vulnerable. Be like, I'm struggling. I feel sad every night when I rock the kids to sleep. I just feel sad. I feel like you don't care about my day. I feel is your power pose here. Because you make me, or you're doing this, or this is because of you, like, is not going to go very far. But if you're telling somebody how you feel, they cannot argue with that. There is purely no argument with somebody's feelings. They're entitled to those. They feel that way, and that's okay. And who knows, you may be able to open up the connection both ways. And they may be able to say, hey, okay, like, I didn't realize you're feeling that way. I haven't been prioritizing this, or, you've made me feel this way. And you have an open dialogue. And at least, if nothing else, you've tried. You've made the attempt. You've tried to bridge to connection, and you're doing something to kind of move this problem forward, to move the needle. For me, some of the times I felt most lonely in my marriage was on holidays. I was like, I just want somebody to stay up with me and build dollhouses till 4 a.m. That would be so romantic. No, but really, like, moms do so much, and they serve and they love and they take care of people. And even women, like, if you don't have kids, like, you're guaranteed, like, you're wrapping presents and you're doing the things for the family. And I think, like, in those situations, it's easy to think like, oh, well, he's going to bed or he's whatever. Like, I really wish, looking back, I wish I would have been like, hey, can you do these things? And I did. There were times for sure, like, especially towards the end of our marriage, where I was like, I want you to do this with me or whatever. And, at that point it was too late. Like, it wasn't genuine, or if you have to beg for it, it's not always like, at that point you're like, well, fuck it. I actually don't want your help. I'll just watch Grey's Anatomy and dream about Patrick Dempsey, McSteamy. No, he's McDreamy. Anyways, but I didn't want to have to beg for it. Sleeping on car drives. You guys, this used to eat me alive. First of all, I was always the one driving, but if you are in the front seat and you need to take a nap, I will slam on the brakes more times than you can even count to wake your dead ass up, because it is lonely when you have kids in the car and you're on a road trip, or even like driving somewhere, like driving to church on a Sunday or whatever. I don't want to be somebody's chauffeur where you're sleeping or you're scrolling on your phone. That establishes loneliness. And it doesn't take one big event where you're like, well, my husband's been gone for, 6 months or whatever. I'm so lonely. It's all these little tiny things that chalk up to feeling lonely. It's all these little moments where you're like, that moment is meant to be in connection with somebody. That moment could be like a bonding experience, or just like a fun memory or something. And you miss all of these little moments, and they add up to that cliff. And then you get to that cliff and you throw a cheeseburger at somebody and you're like, fuck you. I actually am done. Take your freaking cheeseburger and be gone. Be gone. It's just about companionship and connection. And those are the things that ultimately led me to feel so lonely. Even though I was in a marriage with somebody and I had 5 kids, I was constantly around people. I was never alone, but I was so lonely. If you're single and experiencing loneliness, hi, welcome to the club. I'm Kendra and I'm lonely. I think that's what they say in AA. I'm Kendra and I am a connection-holic, apparently. My therapist says it takes a long time to get used to being alone. It takes practice. I personally think she's full of shit. But it's really, really hard. So a couple things that I feel like I have leaned into or tried to do to kind of soothe that part of my anxiety and just feel a little bit less lonely. Learning to enjoy my own company. I think so often, like, I'll fill my time with like going to see random people or going out for drinks or doing, grabbing dinner or whatever. And it's like, what am I seeking? Am I actually seeking connection, or am I just seeking like attention, validation? And I think honestly, like, that's what so many of us are doing. It's even like being on a dating app or whatever. It's like, are you genuinely ready to be back in a relationship or in a relationship with somebody? Or are you just like, you want somebody to be like, hey, you're cute, or like, wow, you look great. Also, men on dating apps are, I don't know if girls are the same. Obviously, I haven't experienced that side of the field, but like, it is wild what people will like respond to. Like, somebody like will respond to a picture on a dating profile and be like, guess what? I actually have no desire to know what. Please don't ever write that. Like the most absurd responses, comments. And I'm like, this is actually not it. This is not how I'm going to feel ever connected to somebody. But even at this point, I don't even feel validated or seen or, getting the attention. Like that's not it, sis. But I do understand like that desire, but I think it's important to recognize like, why am I putting myself in these situations? Whether it's, like I said, going out or whatever, or dating apps. Are you just like seeking the validation from people, or do you actually want genuine human connection? I think seeking connection when you're single with your kids, with your family, with close friends that you can be vulnerable with. And because again, the connection doesn't come from like surface level relationships or casual dating or whatever. It comes from like real, true relationships. And so for me, like in this part of my life where I am very single and very alone, I'm trying to lean into like that relationship with myself by getting to know myself, journaling, just like, even if it's like an hour at a time where you're alone and it's like, okay, I can't spend like the whole weekend alone. I need to like fill my time with other things, like distract myself. I think that's totally okay. It's like easing into it and being like, all right, I'm going to be alone for a couple hours. I'm going to go do this. I personally don't, we're not built to like live our lives alone and not have connection, but I think it's important to be comfortable doing both of those things. And so really it's all going to take practice. See, now I'm sounding like my therapist, even though I think she's full of shit. I don't. I actually love her so much. There's a balance between processing and feeling and doing all that really hard stuff because it is exhausting. And then just like going out there and just having fun and scratching that itch, that part of your life that you do feel like, okay, I can't just like sit here all alone. I'm going to, get swallowed up into a hole, get depressed. But also having both sides where you're leaning into healing, but also just leaning into connection and other people. I do believe loneliness is one of the darkest emotions that we go through. And I think sometimes it's the most hidden and not talked about. And you can look at somebody and not know that they're lonely. And I think that a lot of people have experienced that with me even. And I know like there's a lot of people in my life that wouldn't, if it wasn't for social media and me like oversharing everything about my life, just dumping everything on everybody, nobody would know I was lonely because maybe they're like 3 or 4 people in my life. But beyond that, like, it's not something you just go out and be like, how are you? I am so lonely. That is not a very common thing, but it's something that we all deal with on a very real level in different parts of our life. There's a glorification of being busy and being social, and those things are not tied to being fulfilled and feeling connected. And so I think it's important to discern the difference. If you are feeling lonely, I really challenge you. Today's homework is to speak up. Like, speak up, tell the people in your life, whether if you're in a marriage, tell your spouse, I am feeling lonely. Let them support you. Let them help you. Let them address this with you. It's never going to get better if we don't try to talk about it. We don't grow through it if we don't address it. And so first and foremost, say something. Like, and I know this is sounding like a dare ad where it's like, see something, say something. Well, it's true. You guys, I really think it's important to address that emotion and tell your spouse, tell the people in your life, tell your close friends, I'm feeling really lonely, and see if you can find that connection in other people. And then on the other side of that, on the flip side, lean into what's going on inside and try to figure out, like, journaling, crying, meditating, writing, whatever it might be. Like, just lean in and be like, why am I lonely? Why am I lonely in this marriage? Why am I lonely single? For me, I'm lonely because I love to be in a relationship with somebody, and it's been a crutch for a long time in my life. And now I'm learning that, like, I need to feel fulfilled internally before I seek that in other people, because at the end of the day, sometimes that becomes a little bit selfish when we are just constantly using people to fill a void within us. We have to also be able to give that to other people. Ask for people to meet you where you are, invest in relationships that will fulfill you, and dedicate time and space to feeling fulfilled alone. Thanks for listening to The Summer of Me. You can listen to episodes on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen to podcasts, or you can watch on YouTube. Come hang out and follow my chaos on Instagram @KendraForNow. See you next time.